pledge allegiance to the
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm always concerned we're gonna get confused with Knights of Columbus, Hail Mary, full of grace, pray. That was, you know.
So everyone's here except Adam and Brian, so just to let Elizabeth know who's present for this meeting. Gary recommends that since we have a few people that have to leave at 5:30, that we do the minutes first and take number 6 out of order.
All right, so let's look at the meeting minutes.
So attached are the April 4th minutes. Committee.
Motion to approve?
Jenny made a motion to approve,
I'll second it.
second by Bill. Any discussion? Any changes?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We have to leave at 5:30. Do we have to abstain for part of this? Does it?
No,
No.
you can take the vote.
Is that?
You mean for the minutes, Terry?
Yeah.
Minutes?
No, you can take the vote now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Buddy's here.
Okay. All right. Before Buddy
Steps to the podium.
starts, I just wanted to kind of follow up on the last meeting with the school committee. I've had some emails going back with the superintendent and Jim Kiley. And when she had said, when we talked about the word wiggle room, I think she had said in the meeting that, we're talking about people. And so I followed up with an email to kind of explain the situation with that. And basically what I told her was that I was talking about the $75,000 that was brought up at town meeting, that the school board already approved their budget, and then one school committee member came up and asked for $75,000 from the reserve, which increased their budget by 0.2%. And the reason I said the word wiggle room, and it doesn't apply to layoffs or anything, is that last year, the school committee, at the end of the year, prepaid $800,000 worth of their expenses. That's what I was meaning. In other words, they at the end of the year, they spent their whole budget by prepaying the expenses into the following year. So they had enough money to do that at the end of the year. So every single budget we deal with has wiggle room, because you can't spend, in the state of Massachusetts, your budget is the maximum you can expense. So, we have over $6 million every year we're under budget. So the point I was trying to make was that at the town meeting, it was presented that if they didn't get that $75,000, that the school committee would have to decide who to let go. And I felt that was very misleading, because, they don't, if they didn't get that $75,000, they wouldn't have to let anybody go. So at the end of this year, we'll find out how much they had in prepaid, in other words, prepaid expenses, and that's that's money that they had other than expenses for this year. So they do, everybody has, the police department has wiggle room, everybody has wiggle room. And the other thing is, when everybody does a budget, they'll look at how many employees they have, what their salaries are, if they get step increases. They come up with a whole list of employees. And with the town, it's mostly employees. And just like, we found this with the police department when I was working on it with Beppy, that it's hard to keep all your employees in all the time. So there is, at the end of the year, in other words, somebody leaves, you can't always replace them right away. And if somebody leaves and you promote somebody else to another position, they start at a lower rate. So just, in other words, when the budget's put together, it's put at as if every single employee is there for the whole year, and that, there's not gonna be any gaps, and that's always, that's not true. That there's always, savings by when people leave or replacing somebody at a lesser amount of money. So there's always, it's fluff. I guess probably another term could be fluff, but I know the school committee, I watched the school committee meeting, and they kind of took exception to that. But at the end of the year, I'm not a betting person, but at the end of the year, I bet you they have $900,000, $800,000 of prepaid. At the end of the year, they're gonna prepay $900,000. And it's above board because, and I actually think it's a smart thing to do. Jim discloses that to the school committee. So they're aware of it. But I think the superintendent, this is her first year. She wasn't at that town meeting, so she didn't know what was involved. So that was, I just wanted to clarify that with all of us, where I was coming from. It was really, I was talking about the $75,000. It wasn't, it was $99,000. It wasn't $75,000 that they asked for from the reserve fund last year. So anybody have any questions on that?
I just have a further comment on that, and having experience working with budgets and project plans, every budget or project plan I've ever been involved in, whether I mastered it myself or been a part of, has always had a buffer or risk applied to it, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the duration of that project. So I don't think it's inconceivable that the school department should have some type of buffer,
Yeah.
included in their project and in their budget. So I think you were spot on with that.
Thank you.
I do have something to say about it. Last year with the 99,000, I was there at that meeting.
Yeah.
It is my understanding that the budget that they thought they had and the budget that was put on the paper for the town meeting was not the exact same number, and that's where the 99,000 came from. So we could check into that if you'd like, but I'm almost 100% sure that that was the case, and that's why they asked to move money, and that's why somebody would have to be laid off, because their budget was different than what was put on paper at that meeting.
This is my recollection of that, was that at the select board meeting and the school committee and our meeting, that there was a correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, there was a $477,000 difference. Wasn't it $477,000? In other words.
Last year's budget?
Yeah, remember?
Right.
Yeah, and you did the BAM bonds to make up the difference?
Yeah, we covered it out of the bond
Yeah,
account.
so.
Proceeds, bond
yeah.
proceeds.
So what happened there was we had,
It was 545,000 or something.
how much?
I thought that's what the amount was. I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure the exact dollar amount.
500, all right.
Yeah.
There was an amount that at that joint meeting, we all agreed on that was the amount, and you funded that through the
Bond proceeds account.
bonds proceed account. And then they found out there was an additional amount.
Additional 99,000.
Isn't it still $98,000? So we had all agreed to that, but the school committee did vote on the budget less than $99,000. They did. So,
I'd have to go back and double
Yeah,
check,
yeah,
but,
yeah. Yeah.
it was John Nunes that asked for the
Right.
override.
Yeah, no,
That's
yeah.
correct.
Yeah, and I was sitting next to the school committee and I could hear them talking about it. So I know that there was a discrepancy of what they thought they had and what they actually had.
But they
And there
voted
was-
on, at
yeah.
that school committee meeting, they voted on the one less $99,000.
Okay, well,
Okay.
that might be the case, but
Okay.
anyways, I think we should move on with the meeting, so.
Yeah,
we can
no,
get
no,
what's on the
I
agenda
just want to
today.
make sure that, there was no layoffs needed, and they'll have the excess money in. Okay, so that said, I'd like to invite Buddy Baker Smith to come up to discuss the CPC warrant article review. Yep, right there, thank you. Welcome.
Great, thank you. So I don't, probably best, I haven't seen the warrant, so you know the order of things, so probably.
It's right here.
Oh, now I have to read that? I think I can.
Like you have 7.
All right. Administrative, looks like administrative budget first. So would it just make sense if I just kind of explain some of these and certainly interrupt me with questions? First couple of articles we have, which we typically have for June town meeting, is kind of administrative articles that kind of set us up for the coming year, fiscal '25. And so one of those is the administrative budget, and the CPA, Community Preservation Act, allows for up to 5% of the projected revenues to be set aside for administrative budget for the Community Preservation Committee. And so we are recommending a budget of $35,000, which is a budget we've maintained probably for the last 20 years, I think, something like that. As our revenue has gone up, that actually represents about 3.4% of revenue. But $35,000 has always been more than adequate for us. Any unexpended administrative funds just go back into unrestricted funds, which are then available for future projects. They include things like administrative support, our dues to the Community Preservation Coalition, legal fees for any legal services that the committee may request, and then also allows the committee to spend funds on contracts or surveys, assessments that the CPA allows. So in the past, we have done things like we've funded just recently, the Archaeological Reconnaissance Survey for the town of Dartmouth, the Historical Commission. And we've also done in the past historic building surveys. So the administrative budget's $35,000 is what we're recommending to town meeting approve.
Anybody got any questions? Okay. Article 2?
The second thing is the CPA requires that the town either commit to a project or set aside and reserve at least 10% of the projected revenues for that fiscal year. We've gotten in the habit for our June town meeting to go ahead and just put the minimum amount required for the reserves. When we get projects if we get proposals for the October town meeting, we can draw on those reserves if we have a historic preservation proposal or something like that. But it's just good practice because we don't always know all of the projects we might be entertaining for the course of a fiscal year. So that represents, we have a projected revenue of about $1,014,753 or $33. And so based on that projection, we're recommending setting aside $110,000 in each of the 3 reserves.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Article 3?
Okay, and then we have several project revenue warrants. The first here is the harbor dredging design and permitting, and that is a proposal from the town, and that is to pay for some of the costs of doing a survey of the channel in the harbor and making recommendations on dredging further to create a deeper channel. And this, for the CPA, this is all part of a recreation use for the boating recreation in town. And so this is, the request was $10,000, which we supported and are recommending.
Okay, so that was Article 4, right? Yeah.
What article three?
Yeah,
Well,
you missed
let's
three.
finish.
Oh, look at
4.
that. See,
Yeah, let's-
maybe I can't read this. Yeah, that was Article 4. Sorry about that.
Boy, that's all.
You're paying attention.
So that was Article 4, and I can answer any questions
Okay,
about
Terry-
that.
Terry's got a question on Article 4.
Yeah.
Is this the full cost of the dredging design? Or is there money coming from someplace else?
Yes, the full cost has been estimated at $50,000, and then the $40,000 is going to be a Seaport grant.
And the other question I have about this, and I'll have the same question with the other projects, Betty, is how does this fit into the master plan or the kind of priorities of the town? How do we know that these fit into the priorities?
Great, that's a great question. We have a few proposals that are in the Paden Harbor area, and so we actually asked Chris Vitale to make a special presentation to the CPA or CPC to try to put it all in perspective. So the harbor management plan and the town's master plan, this is consistent with some of the goals there. If I can, I might see where they might have
okay, but-
listed that.
Yeah.
But they've related that to the harbor management plan and the master plan in terms of both the recreational and economic importance of the harbor and public access.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Buddy, my apologies. You know, I sit on the CPC, but I was away when this meeting took place. The design for dredging, is the dredging design for both north and south of the bridge, or just south of the bridge? do you-
Yes, it'll cover the channel going in under the bridge and then also up near where Dias Landing is.
And anything south of the bridge then?
Let's see.
Shouldn't be.
I don't believe so. Well, it goes somewhat south, but it goes, looks like it goes to the breakwater, maybe a little bit past the breakwater. If I look at this
Well,
map.
south of the bridge, the entire channel then?
Yeah, yes.
And what was the $40,000 grant? What was the name of the company?
Seaport Council.
Seaport, okay.
Yep.
Anybody else got any questions on that? Okay, Article 3,
Article 3.
dinghies.
Yeah, this is the Dias Landing dinghy storage improvements, and this is to replace some of the older dinghy storage kind of structures that you see along the harbor there after you've crossed the causeway at Dias Landing there. And this is to replace those and increase the capacity to store both dinghies as well as kayaks. And there's an additional, the total cost of this project is projected to be $50,000 and another $41,000, I believe, excuse me, is also going to be a Seaport Economic Council grant.
Okay. Okay, any questions on Article 3?
If I may, what type of fees do we get for these dinghies that are in the harbor? They're not moorings per se, but we do get some fees for them, and I was just wondering if that would justify the cost of this, initiative.
Right. That was a question that came up in the proposal review. The harbor master kind of answered that question. They do charge fees for the rental, for being able to use the storage area. And I don't know if I have my notes what they charge. I don't know if
I can get you the
think-
amount at the end of the meeting.
No, if
Yeah, I'm
it's-
just,
The revenues were.
I'm just testing the justification
Yeah.
of it, that's all.
So that was a question. Mr. Mello's response was that in terms of the enterprise, is that enterprise fund, I believe is what those fees would go into, right? The enterprise fund, that they don't have a surplus typically by the end of the year, though through the course of the year, the fees come in at an uneven, because more in the spring when they collect these fees. But there were some on the committee that did question whether that was a necessary, or whether they could pay for it out of the enterprise fund. But the majority of the committee supported recommending.
Yeah, I don't believe it's a lot of money, Bill. I think last year they doubled it. They did two things, they doubled it, and the other thing that they implemented was, in the case of moorings, if you have a mooring and you don't use it for 2 years, you lose it.
Right.
And that wasn't true for dinghies, so there were people who had dinghies paid, I think it was $100 a year, and they never put a dinghy in there for multiple years. So, and people are waiting, so I think those are two policy changes that the Waterways Committee implemented. But, so I think it was 100, I'm thinking, you got it right there?
Which category was that again?
It's on
Dinghy racks.
Dinghy storage, Gary, I'm just testing to see how much we
Was it
bring in.
250?
So racks and then 3250. And then dinghy shored 600.
So the total.
So it's
for the
$50,
year-
right?
Yeah.
Bargain,
It's a bargain, yeah,
pay for dinghy
Definitely.
space somewhere else.
yeah. Okay, any more questions on dinghy storage, Article 3? Okay. Okay, Article 5, Pontiac Park and Dias Landing Master Plan.
Yeah, the Pontiac Park and Dias Landing Master Plan. It was helpful to get Mr. Vitale's overview as he explained the harbor management plan and the town's master plan sets some overarching kind of values and goals. But when you get to a piece of property like where Pontiac Park and Dias Landing are, there's a whole lot more detail and that needs to be worked out in terms of just the compatibility of the uses, parking, a lot of real specifics, the seawall protection. So something like a master plan was seen as presented to us at the committee as a way of bringing in both the waterways and the parks and rec into one kind of process that would set some specific and mutual goals and objectives and strategy for improvements in the future of that piece of land. And so the request was $15,000. This too was going to receive some additional money, I believe, from the Seaport District as well, or Seaport Economic Council as well.
Terry?
Buddy, do you know who will do that plan? How, do you know anything about how that person would be identified?
And which, like the person who would oversee this?
The plan, yeah.
Yes, we did ask about the oversight, and this would be from the town administrator's office. So I'm assuming that may, on a day-to-day basis, it would be someone like Mr. Vitale.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else got any questions? No. I know the seawall is a big issue.
What was that, Bob?
I know the seawall is a big
Seawall,
issue,
yeah.
because if they don't fix that, that's gonna deteriorate the peninsula. Okay, no more questions on Article 5, okay. Article 6, Dartmouth Housing Production Plan.
Yes, so every community in Massachusetts is required by the state to do a 5-year housing production plan. And the town of Dartmouth's plan expires this year, or I think this spring of '24. And so this would fund the services to have a consultant. I think they're looking at SERPED as being a likely consultant to work with the town, get input from the town, and develop a 5-year plan for housing production, affordable housing. This 25,000 would, there, as Mr. Vitale explained to us, there are three levels of a detail of a plan that SERPED can offer. 25,000 is the minimum to meet the state requirements. The town is seeking additional grant, technical assistance grant funds from, I think, through SERPED in order to do, I think, either a level 2 or level 3, which would include more public input and go into some more detail. And they're really hopeful that additional money will be received from SERPED to do a higher level plan. But this would, at minimum, meet the state requirements for a plan.
You said every 10 years? Every 10 years?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have any questions on that? Okay, Article 7.
The Cornell Pond Trail Development. So Cornell Pond, I think folks are familiar with that area. There's this proposal is to build, or basically do the design and development for an accessible path that would lead from the parking area at Cornell, traverse some of the parts of the dam, and I know there's probably spillways, I think, maybe, so that you can access more of the pond, and also connect with an adjacent DNRT property, which the name escapes me. Is it the Haskell or
Howland Reserve,
what's that?
Howland Reserve.
I think so. Yeah, there's a DNRT reserve that doesn't have good off-street access, and so by building this trail, which is going to be accessible, so someone with mobility issues could use this trail. So it's a highly engineered trail. It's not like just clearing a path and stuff. So this is, got to be level. The bridges, footbridges over the spillways and things like that. So the request was for $24,000, which the committee supported. And the town is seeking an additional $96,000 from the state, I believe, trails. There's a trails program in the state of Massachusetts.
I think it's called Mass Trails.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'm glad you're here. You really, and it is the Howland Reserve, too. Thank you. And so this would be the design and engineering, probably also kind of preparing for permitting and stuff. It is not the construction of the trail.
But it doesn't say that, right? I mean,
Does not.
it doesn't say. It's not clear.
Doesn't expand on it enough.
Doesn't
That's right.
say, yeah, it doesn't say,
Mr. Chair.
doesn't say study or anything.
So it's, again, not have been there, you know, how long is this trail network? I mean, if they're asking 24,000 and then I think you said a 90-something thousand from other source, that's over $100,000 just to come up with a design and permitting for some trails. That seems kind of, well, not kind of, it seems over the top to me when, again, not knowing any of the details, I know there is spillways and dams there, that structure's gotta be built over that. They're not certainly 100 feet long or not gonna be, I imagine, anything massive. It just seems to me a lot of money for design of a trail system. To me, that would, you know, $100,000 would be to build the trails.
Yeah,
I don't know,
that was
you
a
probably
question.
can't answer that
Right,
question,
right, that was,
Seems over.
we channeled you, I know you were unable to attend, but we did channel you, and that was a question. And so this is, we'll build an ADA compliant pedestrian footbridge on top or adjacent to the dam. And,
Well, wait, not build, it will design or will it build? 'Cause so now I'm really confused.
okay, hold on, yep, let me be careful about how I read this. It is, so this describes the intent of building that footbridge and also 500 to 600 feet of walkway. And the uses for the funds, for the budget, would include field survey and geotech, design services, permitting, and project administration and coordination. So we did not see construction costs in this budget. We support the project, the committee supported the project. Was a question about, is this, you know, how much money we're really going to take to do this. The balance of the funds would be the Mass Trails grant funds. But Mr. Vitale responded this was kind of ballpark estimate that they've received from an engineering firm, but it hasn't, my understanding, it hasn't gone out to bid or anything like that. So how firm that estimate is, not clear.
Just because I think an industry standard for design and engineering is typically 10% of your construction costs. So if you're looking at over $100,000 in design and permitting,
$1 million.
then could we be
$1 million.
potentially looking at $1 million to build a footbridge and some trails? Just seems so out of whack to me.
Well, I think part of it has to do with that it's ADA compliant, and that adds a whole layer of complexity to it. It's not just a trail in the woods.
And I get that, ADA compliant
I'm
is
not saying
only,
it doesn't
you know, it's
seem
gotta be
high,
level,
but,
it's gotta
you
have a
know,
ramp, there's.
We've spent
I've-
far more on
I've been
designs
there,
and
I've
studies
crossed-
in this town.
I've hiked in there, because there are trails in there now, and I've gone across that spillway. It's a little difficulty, and it's not recommended, I think, for everyone to do, but.
Not me right now.
I've done it, it's a little bit challenging, but there's no 30-foot grades there where they're gonna be building these massive ramps, all right? I mean, it's fairly level, so I understand ADA compliance, that you could have this level. It just seems an awful lot of money, if my projections are correct.
Can we get clarity on that? I mean, I think if it's for the design, I think, Gary, I think that it has to say design in the thing. It's not clear in the write-up.
It's not,
No, it's not.
it can
Could
be
we
interpreted both
Could we
ways.
table this until we get more information from Chris on the exact process that they're
So, Buddy, your
proposing?
conversations with Chris, he hasn't distinguished whether or not it's design or actual build?
No, it definitely was, we did not see any construction costs in this. It was kind of the design and engineering and permitting. Yeah. And just as, you know, what the CPC typically does is we will put we will prepare a town meeting packet. And so there's more detailed explanation of each of these projects in the warrant. And so we typically will include any information about matching grants. Certainly in a project like this, I'll be careful to make sure that it's very clear that this is design and engineering and study kind of field work, not for future construction. That's how we understood the proposal.
Well, I think you may want to talk to Sean or whoever, that the writing on this has to be clear on that, because when you're at town meeting, you're voting on exactly the words that are on the warrant, not what's in the packet. And I
We're
understand.
recommending that we add for design.
some-
whatever it is.
If it's gonna
Like
be
I said,
for
we can-
design and development, it should be stated clearly. Shouldn't be,
Clearly, yeah.
Yeah, I
It says
agree.
development, so that's kind of broad, yeah.
Right.
So,
I'd like to see what the projected cost, what's the end game?
yeah.
We're gonna spend $100 and something thousand from two different grants, what's the end game? To build $1 million pathway, then let's make sure we know what we're voting on, if that's the end game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we're gonna table, we're not gonna vote on this anyways tonight, but we'll table it. We'd just like to get answers to those questions. Anybody else have any questions? I do have, so where do we stand on your balances? Do you know? I'm not sure if you're prepared to
Yeah,
talk about
I have some of that information. I just want to mention, we do have one supplemental town meeting warrant, so when you get to that, it's to,
I haven't put that together yet. That's a separate.
Okay, all right.
I recall receiving that.
it's self-explanatory, I think, but
Okay.
we'll see. So what we're projecting, so the fiscal '25 obviously starts in July 1st. So we've made our commitments for fiscal '24, both at last June and October town meeting. Revenue, we've received our state match for fiscal '24. So the only outstanding number for us in terms of where we're going to be at the end of this fiscal year is just the, how the revenues come in. So we get quarterly reports from Donna that show the surcharge revenue and stuff. So based on her reports, what we're looking at is going into the fiscal year with the following balances. For housing, $172,084. For historic preservation, $588,985. For open space, $17,080. For unrestricted, which can be used in any of the three purposes, $1,549,116. And we do carry a debt reserve of $35,288. So that's where we project to be going into fiscal '25. The revenue match from the state, the information is that it's going to be lower, given some of the lower transactions, real estate transaction revenue from the state, more communities having joined. So we were, what the coalition has advised is that the Department of Revenue is saying there would be the match will for fiscal '25 be somewhere under 20%. We don't have a figure yet, so our budgeting right now, our projections, we just picked 15%. Last year it was 21% matched. So we're going in with a kind of an assumed 15% match from the state in fiscal '25. We typically assume about a 2% increase in surcharge revenue year over year, and that holds pretty consistent in Dartmouth. So when you look at that, we're projecting for fiscal '25, $884,639 in surcharge revenue, $130,094 in state match. Our debt service schedule is a debt service payment of $64,950. That represents 7% of our surcharge revenue. We have the administrative fee of $35,000. So the net revenue for fiscal '25, we're projecting at this point $914,783. When you add that to the reserves, leaving the debt service reserve aside, the amount available for funding projects in fiscal '25, we estimate to be $242,047. So that's what we project going into the fiscal year. I added up these projects are 83,000. So it looks like the commitment in June for fiscal '25 is 83,000, and then we'll see what we get in our next funding round.
Anybody have any questions on that?
May I go back to this article? I'm just thinking about this, the one about the harbor dredging design and permitting.
Yeah.
The reason why we're doing this dredging is not to accommodate vessels, is to what? Because the bottom of the harbor has been filled in with.
Yeah, so I think it is to accommodate vessels because now because the silting up of the harbor, it's now restrictive. There are a certain class of recreational sailboat that really can't come into the harbor anymore.
Really?
So they have to kind of either they go to other harbors, as Chris was describing, or they have to kind of compete mooring out
Further out?
So this is to deepen the channel so that more recreational, a wider range of recreational boats can access the harbor. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like open spaces is really low. Is that because you spent a lot of money in previous years?
Yes. Yeah, and our strategy typically is to just keep, we would love to keep the minimum, typically, the minimum in these restricted reserves, just because our hands are tied and we don't know what kind of projects come forward. So our strategy over the years has been to try to keep the unrestricted fund as large as possible while still meeting all the state requirements of minimum commitments and things. So as you see, in comparison, the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund is very large. And that's because we just have not had many big projects come to us. So, when we're putting in $110,000 a year in, something of that nature into historic preservation, but if we're only getting, historic records at $25,000 or something, those reserves build up. So it's good to see the work on the Dartmouth Cultural Center. That's a good chunk, but it's something that we're kind of watching because we really want to see the funds in use so that so the town citizens pay a small surcharge. Our preference is really to try to move that money out into tangible benefits and projects for the town. So I think we've done pretty good. It's just that we've hit a lull with historic preservation, and maybe something will kind of emerge in the future that we can draw that down a little bit more.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Seeing none, I'd just like to thank you.
Yeah,
I know
thanks,
you're
Brian.
the expert on this, and you keep everything in good order, and we really appreciate your efforts.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. It is a team effort, so I really appreciate the CPC. We don't kind of call it out too often, but half of our members are appointed from other committees. So you have to kind of give a shout out to these people from the Housing Authority, Planning Board, Historic. I mean, they signed up for something else.
Yeah,
And they've, all of them, you know, John for years from the planning board, all of them have been just really committed to doing the CPC, kind of their CPC responsibility as well. So good to get them. They don't get that recognition, but I kind of look around the room and I'm like, ooh, you guys all have this a whole other thing that, you know, that you're doing as well as this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I gave a list of articles that are ready for review. Potentially, if the committee wants to vote on them, the CPC articles, except the one that we just talked about, which I would bring up to the town administrator to maybe reword as far as that, but we continue to go on, or we can go back to the first CPC article, and then I can inform you of which articles are ready as we go forward
Okay.
for discussion and a vote, if the committee wants. I think that's, you
Straightforward, except for the one that we had questions
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
Yeah, all right,
want to go back to Article 1 for the CPC?
yeah.
okay,
Motion to recommend Article 1 to town meeting.
okay, all right,
I'll second it.
okay. All right, so let me read it first. Okay. Okay, Article 1, Community Preservation Committee Administrative Budget, to see if the town will vote to appropriate 2025 Community Preservation Fund annual revenues in the amount of $35,000 for administrative expenses as referenced in the Community Preservation Fiscal Year Budget 2025. Okay, so John made a motion to
Recommend.
recommend. Terry seconded it. Discussion?
Seems straightforward to me.
Yeah,
Me too.
I agree.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none. All right, so,
7-0.
Sub-zero.
7-0.
I have a draft already, because Gary graciously sent me the Word doc. So I have a draft of our recommendations.
Great.
Oh, okay.
so you want to read what we're gonna, rationale?
It depends how fast you want to move along, because we can certainly do that another time, because it's very straightforward.
Okay, all right, we can do that.
You know, do the votes, and if you want to
Okay.
go
Yeah,
back.
that's a good idea. I think we do the votes, and
Yeah,
then maybe next meeting we...
And then,
A lot of these words
then
are
we'll go back to
standard.
the verbiage, yeah. Good idea.
And it's not particularly controversial.
Okay, Article 2. Community Preservation Committee Fiscal Year 2025 Community Housing and Historic Preservation Reserve, to see if the town will vote to appropriate or reserve for later appropriation monies for the 2025 Community Preservation Fund annual revenues in the amount of $330,000. Boy. As referenced in the Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2025 budget, to be allocated as follows: $110,000 for housing reserve, $110,000 for open space reserve, and $110,000 for historic preservation reserve.
Motion to recommend at town meeting.
Okay, John made a motion
And I'll
to,
second it.
John made a motion to recommend. Bill second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Article 3, Dice Landing Dignity Storage Improvements, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $9,000 from the Community Preservation Act unrestricted fund to the Town of Dartmouth Waterways Management Department for the Dice Landing Dinghy Storage Improvements, all in accordance with the terms and conditions of the Community Preservation Memorandum of Understanding and referenced in the Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2025 budget. Somebody want to make a,
Make a motion
To
to,
recommend.
all right, I'm going to let Terry take this one. All right,
Just share those motions.
Terry
made a motion
made a motion.
to recommend.
Phil, I'll let second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? I see none. Okay, so
Was Dias Landing? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dice Landing, well, dinghy storage,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Article 4, harbor dredging design and permitting, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $10,000 from the Community Preservation Act unrestricted fund to the town of Dartmouth for the harbor dredging design and permitting, all in accordance with the terms and conditions of the Community Preservation Memorandum of Understanding and referenced in the Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2025 budget. Somebody want to make a motion to recommend?
I'll make a motion to
Okay,
recommend.
so Bill made a motion to recommend. Somebody want to second it?
I'll second it.
Terry seconded it. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Explains it.
Any opposed? I see none. Article number 5, Pontiac Park and Dice Landing Master Plan. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $15,000 from the Community Preservation Act unrestricted fund to the town of Dartmouth for the Pontiac Park Dice Landing Plan, all in accordance with the terms and conditions of the Community Preservation Memorandum of Understanding and referenced in the Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2025 budget.
Motion to present?
Phil made a motion to recommend.
Second?
I'll let Terry, give Carrie off a chance. Carrie second. Any discussion?
No.
No.
Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none.
700.
Yep.
7-0. Beautiful.
Article number 6, Dartmouth Housing Production Plan. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $25,000 from the Community Preservation Act Housing Fund to the town of Dartmouth for the Dartmouth Housing Production Plan, all in accordance with the terms and conditions of the Community Preservation Memorandum of Understanding and referenced in this Community Preservation Fiscal Year 2025 budget.
Motion to recommend?
John made a motion to recommend.
I'll- yeah.
Second, Phil? Okay, any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, we agree that Article 7, we're gonna hold off
Has to
on.
be revisited, yep.
Okay, Article 8 would be the next one.
That's good, okay. Article 8, appropriation from the cemetery sale of lot fund. To see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer the sum of $2,000 from the cemetery sale of lot fund to be spent on cemetery purposes in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 114, Section 15 and 25.
Question.
Yeah.
Good.
What is a cemetery purpose?
That was my question.
Cutting the grass?
Yeah. Good question, Phil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maintain.
General upkeep of the.
Yep.
So, okay.
Great.
Make a motion?
Okay, Terry made a motion to recommend. Somebody want a second?
Second?
Second by Janine. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
See none. Okay.
Article 9?
Article 9 is good? Okay. Okay. Establish a fiscal year 2025 maximum spending budget for revolving funds. To see if the town will vote to pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and 1/2, and Section 37-6 of the general bylaws to determine the maximum spending limits in fiscal year 2024 for the following revolving funds, the purpose of which are detailed in Section 37-6 of the general bylaws. Okay. Cemetery, first fund is Cemetery Revolving Fund, $4,500. Recreation and Park Revolving Fund, $250,000. Library Revolving Fund for lost damaged items, $3,500.
Make a motion to approve?
Terry makes a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Bill seconded it. Discussion.
What is the library revolving fund for lost or damaged items budget now?
It is, all of these funds have to be approved every single year,
Right.
okay? And what they are is the maximum that they can spend.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, okay. That's the maximum they're gonna understand. So I'm assuming that when they have a loss of damaged item book or anything, that these are what they use to replace it. That would be my guess. I know the Parks and Recreation is, this is how much money they can spend on food. They sell it, but, do you wanna,
That's been
Elaborate.
increased over the years.
Yeah, it
I
has.
think maybe what the question is what their budget is. We'd
Yeah.
have to get the details on what their actual limit is. They're only allowed to spend up to what is approved
No,
at
no,
town
I
meeting.
understand.
wonder what
My
the-
question is,
what the-
what's been approved in the
Yeah.
past?
We increased the, I know last year or the year before that, we increased the rec, because we had like 125,000 and it wasn't enough.
well,
and they
food
were-
prices
they-
went up.
Yeah, right, so they needed an additional
Yeah.
authority to spend,
Sure.
so.
But we get this money back. We get
Yeah.
this money back when they sell. But it's just for that year, that's the maximum. Do you want to elaborate any more on that?
Well, if you want like a detail of what they've spent in the past and what's been run in the past, we can get that. I can send that to you if you want that.
Please.
All right.
Motion to recommend Article 9.
John recommends, John voted to recommend Article 9. Somebody want to second it?
I'll second it again.
Second by Bill. Any discussion? Any more discussion?
No.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none.
Okay, Article 10 is the budget, which we still have in draft form. We're looking to have that finalized by the next meeting.
So we'll
which will
hold
be the,
on.
Article 10 is capital planning, right?
Excuse me, capital planning. Actually, we just met with, CPC just met, we voted on they voted on the plan. I'll have that put together for the next meeting, so that the committee can look at that. That was just voted on today at about 3 o'clock.
So the items here is
No,
not.
this is,
Not the final?
no. It'll be updated, and I'll have that for the committee.
That's on hold then, right?
Yeah, that's a hold. So Article 11, we may not need, there's a balance in the account right now that we don't think that there's any contractual agreements that need to be settled before the end of the year. So I'm still talking about Sean about this, but I think we may not need Article 11.
Okay. That's on hold too then.
Right. Article 12 can be voted on.
Okay. So
Okay.
since Article 11 might be eliminated, I'm not going to call this Article 12. I'm going to call this salaries and stipends of elected officials. Okay?
Okay.
Say that again?
Since Article 11 might not be needed, this might be Article 11. So I just want to make sure I'm clear that we're voting on salaries and stipends of elected officials.
Okay, yeah, right. The numbering may change if we don't need it, correct?
The numbers tend to change a few
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. To see if the town will vote to fix the salary of the following elected officer of the town as provided in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, and any and all acts and amendments therefore. Town clerk at 1, fiscal year 2024, $98,277. Fiscal year 2025, $102,685. And to see the town will vote to fix the stipends on the following elected officers of the town as provided by the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, and any and all acts and amendment thereof. 3 Board of Assessors at 0 for fiscal year 24 and fiscal 20, all these are fiscal 24 and 25. Board of Health, 3, 0. Board of Library Trustees, 6 at 0. Parks and Recreation Board, 5 at 0. Select Board, 5 at 0. Planning Board, 5 at 0. School committee, 5 at 0. And town moderator, 1 at 0. So, that said, somebody want to make a recommend, and then we'll have the discussion?
I'll recommend.
All right, so Bill recommends recommends the article, salaries and stipends of elected officials. Someone want to second it?
I'll second it.
Second by Terry. Discussion.
I do.
Okay, so
If
what
I
is
may.
the- That's good.
Okay, town clerk, I just did some calculations, that's 4% increase over last year's. Does that fit into the guidelines that we're giving to other officials within the town? 4% increase. If you take the 102,685 divided by 980,277, that's a 4% increase.
She, as far as I know, they go off the steelworkers, they go off she mimics the steelworkers management union, the union.
Yeah.
And I can verify to see what was agreed upon with her information.
Yeah.
But that's what was supplied to us.
Okay.
To me, was the
Because I was just wondering how that fit
106.85.
in with the other, administrators in the town.
Yeah, she just
Yeah.
did get her certification,
Yeah,
as far as a certified town clerk,
okay.
so.
I was just seeing how it fit in
No,
as far as
I've
keeping
been
things
asking that
equal.
question all along, is that,
Yeah,
I thought they all got 3%.
I believe they settled with 1.5 for fiscal '25. So,
Okay.
if you want to hold on this, I can
the other
get more
problem,
information.
the other problem that was a little confusing is, they settled for 3, 1, and 1.5.
3, 1.5.
Right, but then there's these step increases
Right, so
that go along on top of the salary that we don't talk about. So someone's salary goes from $100,000 to $107,000, but they only got 2%.
right, so they're on a scale base too. So, I'm not sure what level she's at as far as like where she falls on the scale, because she's really not steel worker, but they mimic the steel worker
She's elected.
contract.
Well,
Right.
she elects to do
She's not
that,
a union
right?
person.
No, she can't be.
No, she's not union, right.
I know.
So this is her recommendation. I mean, really what it comes down to, this is what she recommended, right?
This is what we received from the department, yeah.
Right. So this is what, I just want to, back up again.
So we can hold off, I can do more research on it if you'd like.
Want
or-
to, if that's-
Yeah, I like to,
You like
just
to?
to
Okay,
keep
that's
things
fine.
on
Yeah,
even,
I don't
even
have a
scale.
problem with an increase, I just would like it to be consistent with the other departments and with the employees
Yeah.
in the town clerk's office.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm saying too, as
That's
long as it's
fair.
consistent, yes.
Yeah,
That's
now,
fair
keep in mind,
enough.
they're in a different union. The town clerk, they're in the DTEA, so
Okay.
the clerks in the office are in a different union than the town clerk would be.
So she's not in the steelworkers union though?
No,
No.
No, but
She's
they
elected
mimic
official.
the steel workers.
we went through this last year.
Who's they, when you say?
She mimics the steel workers.
Under a contract or?
No, it's not a contract, so they try to, when they do their analysis of.
Who's they?
Well, administration, when there's comparatives done, they look at comparable communities. And so, just as the steel workers, when they did the analysis, when they did that whole analysis back in like 2018, 2019, they looked at comparable communities, so that's what they're using for, in combination of what is already out there for grades and steps.
So I'd be curious how she came up with the number of 102,685. Was that recommended by the town clerk or by somebody else?
Well, I'm gonna do more research on it,
All right.
and I'll break it
That's
out
fair.
so we know.
Well, I think the discussion when she came and presented to us is she likes to follow what the union folks get.
Okay,
It's her recommendation.
okay.
We'll clarify that. We'll put it on hold.
Yeah, the clarification would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I say this every year, but I still think that the stipends and that salary should be a separate warrant article, because I do
You're right.
believe that.
Totally agree with you.
I think that there should be stipends paid. It costs money to run for office. The stipends aren't that big dollars, and I
We're not
think.
on the list.
So what's that?
We're not on the list.
Well, no, because we're appointed.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say this every year. No one runs for the money, or
I-
doesn't run
No,
because of the
no.
money.
No,
No one
but-
ever makes that
And
choice.
we're not the
No.
only
We
ones.
volunteer
Won't
all
run
the
because I'm
time.
not getting $300. I mean,
Yeah, but
I'm going to say I agree with Bob, because one of the things that we wish for is that we would have a range of representatives on these boards and committees, and not just mainly retired people, which is what we end up doing, because we're the people who have the time and no kids to find childcare for. So in my mind, and not to mention the fact that, although Gary takes care of this now, it used to be some cost to people in printing things out and all of that, but I think it would be a benefit to have some stipend available to people, not as a motivation to run, because I agree with Janine, I don't think people run for that reason, but to offset some of the costs that it would be to a younger person or a person who had a family to take care of things
Yeah.
and participate. We need more people, and a wider range of people on these boards and committees.
Yes, we do.
that's my thinking.
I
I
agree.
disagree with that. I think unfortunately that's the time part of it, though. Someone that works, well, I certainly never could have done it while I worked because I worked out of town. But it has to do with time, completely to do with time. They just don't have an evening free to do meetings all the time, especially if they have
fair.
children.
That's so fair.
I did rise on school committee, back and forth commute. So
And I
you-
think we've always said that if this were put in place and you didn't want to take the stipend, you could donate it to somebody.
Well, that would be my other thing,
Yeah.
because, you know, you could do the Dartmouth Alumni Association, you could do the Music Association. So, you know, if everybody got it
That's a
and they
good
don't want it,
point.
then that's fine, but, you know, somebody like Carrie's, a couple of kids, you
Yeah.
know, okay, you know,
I'm sorry, you're
would be-
suggesting we pay Carrie, but no one
Yeah,
else?
No, I would actually
but I'm
donate
saying-
it.
I'm just saying, you know,
I would.
people, you know, if you run, you gotta buy signs and, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
there's
it's
a
called
cost.
fundraising and donations.
I
and
know.
You can look on the town website to
Yeah.
see what people have in their campaign accounts.
My point is to get more diverse and probably younger people, I guess, probably, to run. All right,
I will say this, I've been on the downside of this and on the receiving end of this, you know, for years. I got on the planning board in the early 90s, and we had a stipend, I think it was $500 a year. At some point, I think in the late 90s or early 2000s, that was
2008.
eliminated. And that was certainly no reason for me to run, because there was money there. But I will tell you this, it certainly was appreciated, even though back then we were meeting once a week. Sometimes we were out till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. My children were young, I was taking, you know, it was still appreciated to get $500 a year. And I would, you know, I could say, see the new barbecue grill in the backyard? You know, I bought that with the $500. A little, oh, we went on vacation, and see the extra thing we just didn't, you know, it was that $500 I made. You know, it was still appreciated, even though it was, you know, and it still hasn't stopped me from volunteering, it hasn't stopped any of us from volunteering. But I think it should be something that should be implemented again, and it wouldn't affect us at all, but I think these other
yeah.
people, I think, it's just a sign of appreciation. And I'm
That's
on the, recently, two years ago, I got elected to the Prudential Committee in the fire, and that's a stipend I received for that. Again, doesn't pay for, you know, the hours you
No,
put in,
no,
but
no,
at
it
least,
doesn't, it
at
doesn't.
least it's a little something.
I
Sure.
mean, there's a lot of, you know, the way this town is structured, there's a lot of volunteers that are involved in government, which I think is good. But I think these amounts are so small compared to the over $100 million budget that it's just the right thing to do. Okay, so we're not gonna vote on this tonight, so, what's up next there?
Article 13, that's the budget. We'll have that finalized.
Did we vote on Article 12? Or,
No,
No.
It's on hold,
We need some
John,
more information.
because of the information about the town clerk.
All right, yep.
Okay, so Article 13 is, Article 14 we'll have next week.
Okay,
So Article 15, 613.
All right.
Did we skip through?
That's the budget,
That's the
Article 13.
budget.
That's the budget.
That's gonna be reviewed separately.
Oh, oh, okay, never mind.
So Article 14 we'll have next week. Article 15 is the, so here we start with the enterprise fund budgets. So 15, 16, 17, 18, and
So-
19 are ready to go.
Ready to
So
go?
I would just like to say that I'm very impressed because for years, we were waiting for town overhead. We were waiting for town overhead and we got.
One of the first things that we work on, because we already know what the, pretty much how many employees we have and
Yep.
what the results are of that, so.
But in the past, this was always an issue. We
Yeah.
couldn't vote on it, so I'm very glad to see that's here now, so,
And the basis of the enterprise funds, as the committee knows, is the fees supplement the revenue supplement the expense to cover most of the operations of the budget, their budgets.
okay, so, let me
So
see.
Article 15.
All right, let me just look at this first, because there's a lot here. Direct expenses, indirect expenses. Okay. So. Right, so, this is more for Phil and Carrie. These enterprise funds, when you first look at it, the revenue equals the expense. And that's the way it is
On all
every
of
year. On all of
Yeah,
them.
right.
And, but it's really the expenses that you're voting for, because the revenue obviously usually comes in much higher, and that goes to retained earnings. So it just, I remember my first year looking at it and saying, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Revenue and,
Balanced
exactly,
budget.
exactly the same, it doesn't make sense to me. So, say, okay, so, I'm not gonna use the article number, I'm gonna say funding solid waste enterprise fund, to see if the town will vote to approve $1,986,680 pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, with the appropriation of $1,618,776 for the purpose of funding direct operating expenses for the solid waste department for fiscal year 2025, and in order to fund indirect operating expenses, an additional $367,904 has already been appropriated in the general operating budget and allocated to the solid waste enterprise fund, with all expenses funded from the solid waste enterprise revenues, all as shown in the detail below. Okay, sanitation division, $1,414,461. Emergency reserve, $50,000. Crapo Hill assessment, $153,015. Debt service, $0. Debt service is $0?
What is that?
Okay. Solar net metering credits, $1,300. So subtotal direct expenses, $1,618,776. DPW administrative costs, $25,773. Highway division costs, $35,702. Fleet maintenance division costs, $43,900. Town overhead, $262,529. Subtotal, indirect expenses, $367,904, for a total of expenses, $1,986,680.
Motion to
Well, let me
recommend?
just,
You have the revenues.
solid waste.
Let's not forget that.
Solid waste base rate, $925,000. Smart bag fee, miscellaneous revenue, $981,680. And transfer station, $80,000, for a total revenue of $1,986,680. Okay, go ahead, Terry.
Make a motion to recommend?
Terry makes a motion to recommend,
I'll second.
second by Carrie. Any discussion?
Why is the debt service zero?
They have no debt on the books for the.
They have a
solid
what?
waste. No debt on the books. If you look at their retained earnings, this is probably one of the programs that run very efficient. And most of it, like when we talk about capital, they're using their retained earnings to purchase a lot of their equipment,
Okay.
a lot of things like that. It runs very efficient.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw that.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, good,
okay, ready to vote?
Yes.
yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none. Okay, Article 16. I'm not supposed to say Article 16. Funding Water Department Enterprise Fund, to see if the town will vote to approve $6,149,325 pursuant to the provision of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53, F and a half, with an appropriation of $4,952,992 for the purpose of funding direct operating expenses of the Water Department for fiscal year 2025, and in order to fund indirect operating expenses, an additional $226,333 has already been appropriated in the general fund operating budget and allocated to the Water Enterprise Fund, with all expenses funded from Water Enterprise revenues as shown in the detail below. Okay, so expenses, Water Division, $3,755,134. Debt service, $1,027,553. Solar metering credits, $170,305.
Question about that.
That-
About the-
The solar net metering credits,
Mhm.
$170,000 for the Water Enterprise Fund, and it's $1,300 for,
Okay, let me just go through this and then we'll come back to that.
yeah.
Okay. Subtotal direct expenses, $4,952,992. Okay. DPW administrative costs, $191,113. Construction division costs, $131,881. Engineering costs, $148,724. Fleet maintenance division costs, $43,624. Town overhead, $710,991 for a total of indirect expenses of $1,226,333. Total for all expenses, $6,179,325. Revenue, system development charge, $90,000. Other department revenue, $295,000. Interest and demands, $10,000. Investment income, $2,000. Water rates, $5,782,325, for a total of $6,179,325. Somebody want to make a motion to recommend?
I recommend,
Bill recommends, somebody want a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Terry. Discussion. Okay, go ahead.
Solar net metering credits, $170,000. And the solid waste fund was $1,300.
Why the difference?
So when we get credit for these credits, when we build for and we get these credits, depending on the usage on in these facilities, the water facility is a much larger operation than it would be for solid waste. So the credits that are allocated to those different departments are a lot smaller on the solid waste side than they would be on the water side.
Yeah, because they get those pumps and all
Oh,
that
it's,
stuff,
yeah, it's
It's a
a much larger operation.
Also, the investment income,
Yes, well, we're conservative with what we put in for income and when we budget, even on the town side. We're earning 5% on unallocated funds, but keep in mind, this is not general fund money, so we wouldn't, in the general fund side, we have much more cash available to invest. This is an enterprise fund, so their cash is a lot smaller, so we wouldn't want to budget an amount that's, I don't want to say out of the ballpark, but, so we stay conservative with the amount. If you look at these amounts, they haven't really much changed because we're conservative on what we're budgeting.
all right.
Okay.
Gary, save me the trouble of finding it in terms of the water rates. How much of an increase is this over last year? And a more important question in my mind is, does it incorporate an increase that they've been talking about?
So, the rates increased, I believe, I wanna say, an average of 3%, but there was a part of the rate increase was also to build a little bit of reserve.
Right.
Because if you remember over the years, there was 0% increases, which
That's why I
now
was
a negative
asking,
increase,
right,
which
right.
negative impact the budget. So they had just finished the rate study, they had the group that did it. And so when they come back with an analysis, they can have a better handle on what the rate should be going forward. But
They have increased it somewhat.
yes,
Okay.
correct, yeah.
Thank you.
And we're seeing that the revenues are trending in positive direction for both the water and sewer enterprise funds.
4%.
Open.
Yes, actually, if I just did the calculations from the FY
on the
20.
rates?
Yeah, then it's
Yeah.
about 4%.
Yeah, I thought it was like 3.5.
It's actually, it's 3.9.
Yeah,
Close to 4.
Yeah.
and those are set every single June for the new year.
All right, so we ready to vote?
I'll take a motion to vote.
I think, didn't we already do it?
You already
you
did
already
that.
did.
Now we're voting.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I see none. All in favor, 7-0-0. All right. All right, so Bill and Terry have to leave in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Is there any items that we want to, other than enterprise funds, that you want to, or?
It's, well, after the enterprise funds, it's 21, 22, 24. Which I believe it's the long-term capital stabilization fund, setting it up, funding it, and then 24 is a conservation article.
It's kind of complex.
Yeah, that's kinda
Amendments to the
complicated.
Yeah,
wetlands.
I didn't think we would get through all these tonight, but I mean,
Take them
So-
7 minutes to read it.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, we could fast forward to Article 20 if you want to go over that one. Personnel by law amendments, new positions and
well,
salary
that was not
adjustments.
available, that was
That's
not
not
ready yet.
available.
Unavailable? Oh, well, so much
The
for
rest
that
of, the
idea.
only ones that are available left are
Want to finish
17,
stabilization?
18,
Oh, the enterprise. All right, we'll finish the enterprise funds.
yeah, okay, yeah, that's,
Okay, we'll go on to the sewer department, funding sewer department enterprise fund. To see the town will vote to approve $6,009,635 pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, with an appropriation of $4,847,701 for the purpose of funding direct operating expenses of the sewer department for fiscal year 2025 in order to fund indirect operating expenses an additional $1,161,934,000 has already been appropriated in the general fund operating budget and allocated to the sewer enterprise fund, with all expenses funded from the sewer enterprise revenues. All is shown in detail below. Sewer division, these are expenses. Sewer division, $822,075. Water pollution control, $2,538,135. Stabilization fund, $151,150. Debt service, $1,037,839. Solar net metering credits, $298,502. So total direct expenses, $4,874,701. DPW administrative costs, $86,522. Construction division costs, $102,574. Engineering costs, $123,937. Fleet maintenance division costs, $18,003. Town overhead, $830,898. Subtotal indirect expenses, $1,161,934, for a total of expenses of $6,009,635. Revenues, system development charge, $55,000. Other department revenue, $700,000. Infiltration inflow, $35,000. Interest and demands, $5,000. Investment income, $600. and sewer rates, $5,214,035, for a total of $6,009,635. Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay, so Phil made a motion to approve. Someone want a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Bill. Discussion.
Question.
ahead.
Gary, under the sewer revenues, what is the other department revenue, $700,000? We got the sewer rates, I understand, but where are they getting another $700,000 from?
Departmental revenue.
Does that come from New Bedford? No. No, we pay them. That's not,
Yeah.
no, we pay them. We pay them, yeah. No.
That's a good-sized chunk of other revenue.
Right,
Yeah,
I wonder what the source is.
right?
I can get the breakout, it might take me, it's gonna take me a little bit to find it, but if you wanna hold on this one.
Is it, they sell the sludge?
Well, yeah, so the bays that they have down there for like sludge and composting, they actually make, revenue on that. So when they estimate we've estimated another $100,000 on that, just, it's either gonna come out, it's either the revenues from that or the rates. So when we put these numbers in, for the revenues, we estimate the 5.2 because we're thinking that's gonna be like, I think that was also 3.5%, whatever that amount was, for additional revenue. But they do sell other items. I'd have to get the list of other items they sell, but I think sludge is one of them. And composting that they use for the big mix with the products. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but we can get the detail.
That's pretty good revenue generator. You think you might want to expand that, put some signs out there or do something? I mean, geez.
All right, so
You
you
know,
want to hold off
can we
on
make
this?
some more money there if,
Wanna hold off and find out what the other revenue is?
Yeah, would you,
No,
yeah.
I think we can still vote on it, but I think it's piqued everybody's interest, in what is that? And, you know, we're always looking for revenue sources, is that a revenue source we can expand on?
Economic development.
Yes.
Right? That's fair.
I'll get the breakout of what they
All right.
consider other
Ready
revenue.
to vote?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So are we going to continue after you two leave? Or
We
just-
got
Well, you
leave.
guys still
wanna
have a
hold off?
quorum, so I
Yeah,
would
we
think
Still
you
have
could
a
do the
quorum, won't they?
enterprise.
They got 7 here, 5 is a quorum.
I
Sometimes
wouldn't
people
feel
wanna
like
be
I
here.
was missing out if you
I'm
did
just
the
saying, if there's
enterprise,
anything that
'cause they're
you
pretty
want us-
straightforward.
All right, we'll
You
continue.
want, you wanna, we can maybe finish the enterprise, and then maybe we have, when we have the full group back again, we talk about the stabilization and the
Sure.
funding of it, because I know Terry, we're involved with that one.
So you don't want me to,
It's nice to see
so
you.
you don't want to listen to me read this?
She's not that excited about
Yeah,
cable
we'll see you
TV
next
and.
week.
You know, and I'll watch it on TV after.
Oh, we're-
Vacation? No.
No,
Up
not
late
this
tonight with
year.
popcorn.
Yeah, we went away in February.
Back to China.
All right.
Bye.
Bye,
Have
folks.
fun.
Have a good rest of the
Bye, Terry.
evening.
Get those articles done, Terry.
You're never gonna get stipends if you keep leaving early.
Well, there's like 8 of them.
Yeah, no, that's, all right. Okay.
Okay, cable TV.
Cable TV, funding Dartmouth Cable Television, DCTV Enterprise Fund. To see if the town will vote to approve $615,004 pursuant to special legislation approved by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in 2014 and the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, with an appropriation of $497,963 for the purpose of funding direct operating expenses of the town of Dartmouth Cable Television for fiscal year 2025, and in order to fund indirect operating expenses for an additional $117,041, has already been appropriated in the general fund operating budget and allocated to Dartmouth Television Enterprise Fund, with all the expenses funded from cable access, franchise fees, and other Dartmouth Cable Television revenues, as shown in the detail below. Expenses, personnel, $357,529. Expenses, $140,434. Subtotal direct expenses, $497,963. Town overhead, $117,041. Subtotal indirect expenses, $117,041. Total, $615,004. Revenue, cable access franchise fees, $609,004. Seal tapes, sponsorships and services, $5,000. Other income, solar credits and investment, $1,000. Total revenue, $615,004. Someone want to make a recommendation to approve?
Recommendation to approve.
Bill made a recommendation to approve. I want a
Second.
Second by Janine. Discussion.
It's getting sleepy.
Discussion.
I have a quick question, and it's not for this specific, but when it says town overhead, what, like, just basic
So-
stuff, what's
So,
in town
For instance, I'll
overhead?
give you an instance, like on the water, on the water sewer example.
Yeah.
So we charge off, like, my salary.
Yeah.
Some, a portion of it, not a lot, but
Yeah,
a portion of it, a portion of the town accountant's salary,
okay,
because we collect the bills. The
Oh,
town accountant
okay.
produces invoices that
Yep.
are paid for. So these are all costs that are based on in the town side.
Yep.
But we can charge back the enterprise fund.
okay,
And that's the same for every single one of them. Like DCTV, you wouldn't see a chargeback from me because we don't collect any bills on behalf of DCTV, but there are certain, departments in town that have chargebacks to the
Okay.
DCTV.
okay. Thank you for the
Yeah,
clarification.
it's mainly salaries and like benefits. That's really what we're charging back.
Okay. That's it, that's all I really wanted to know, because I saw it on a lot of them, so.
So make a motion.
Well, we already made the motions, so ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None? 5-0-0.
Now it's 500, yeah.
Aye.
Yeah.
Waterways, funding Waterways Management Enterprise Fund. To see if the town will vote to approve $355,534 pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, with an appropriation of $300,810 for the purpose of funding direct operating expenses of the Waterways Management Department for fiscal year 2025 in order to fund indirect operating expenses for an additional $54,724 has already been appropriated in the general fund operating budget and allocated to the Waterways Management Enterprise Fund, with enterprise funds, with expenses funded with $331,655 from the Waterways receipts, a transfer of $2,000 from the general fund to the Waterways Management Enterprise Fund as a subsidy for parking fee fines issued by the Waterways staff at Waterways Landing, for which the general fund is the general beneficiary, and transfer of $21,879 from the Waterways Improvement Fund for the purpose of funding $21,879 of the salary of the harbor master included in the appropriation of personal services below, in accordance to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5G, all is shown in details below. Personnel services, $198,528. Expenses, $91,682. Debt service, $10,600. Total direct expenses, $300,810. Town overhead, $54,724. Total expenses, $355,534. Revenues, waterways usage fees, $207,055. Mooring fees, $94,350. Licenses and permits, boat launch, $28,500. Parking ticket revenue, transfer $2,000. Waterways Improvement Fund transfer, $21,879. Other income, solar credits and investment, $1,750, for a total of $355,534 in revenue. Someone want to make a,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Harry made a motion to approve. Bill, second. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
So the only the other three that I had recommended, but with Article 21, 22, and 24, but 24 is the lengthy one for conservation. 21 discusses the establishment of a long-term capital stabilization fund. As you know, that we've developed that committee in town to focus on longer-term projects. And then Article 22 funds that article.
Okay, that's the $1 million
Yes.
long-term capital stabilization
Plus some
fund.
funds of free cash.
It's gonna come out of free cash.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Establishment of long-term capital stabilization fund, to see if the town will vote to accept the fourth paragraph of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, which allows for the deduction of revenue streams to stabilization funds. Somebody want to make a motion to recommend?
Waved his hand.
Oh, Phil, hey,
Speak up.
Phil. All right, Phil recommend, voted recommend, second?
I second it.
Second by Carrie. Okay, discussion.
Yeah, my only comment, so if you look at the next article is appropriation for $1 million for, to the long-term capitalization stabilization fund. What defines long-term capital versus short-term capital? Who's gonna make that decision, and the distinguish between the two of them? I just wanna make sure if we're putting the money aside for long-term capital, that it's being used for long-term capital. So is there any policies or so that is attached to this, or,
Gary?
you know,
Good question.
long-term capital to me isn't buying 3 cruises every year like we do. I don't think, so there should be a policy or something attached with this, maybe not for town meeting to approve, but I would like to know that there's something in place that this cannot get abused in the future, because we may not be here, and we were part of approving this, and somebody else is using that stabilization account to buy 3 new cruises.
There has been substantial meetings on long-term capital and what the definition of what the committee, the long-term capital committee, defines as long-term capital, schools, water treatment plants, and have kept out all the short-term stuff, police cruisers, as you mentioned, routine maintenance to buildings. So it's mainly projects that will be funded within 10 years out and have a life expectancy of about 30 years, a school, treatment plant. So these are large ticket items. These are not items that we're looking, or the committee is looking to fund short-term. And those are clearly been defined as what those projects are.
Right, it was in the plan that we all saw.
Yeah, I think it's in the aggregate, it's about $299 million in long-term projects. So these are big projects, not, but as far as like a policy, there has been no established policy.
So
in place
can we
yet.
at least, I don't know how difficult this, in Article 22, call out that revenue for the long-term capital stabilization, there should be something in the long-term capital plan that, so at least as a reference, if we're distinguishing, there's 2 lists. There's short range, police cruisers and dump trucks and that kind of stuff that we're buying every year. And this long-range capital plan, shouldn't we be referring to that in the article or somewhere saying it should come from that plan?
I
maybe-
thought that plan was gonna be presented at town meeting, or
Yeah,
some flavor
I
of
thought
it.
so too.
I think they're gonna I think they're doing a presentation at town meeting to discuss what the potential projects are
Right.
going forward. But maybe a suggestion would be that in the little blurb that the committee puts together, mention something to that effect, like that these are for long-term capital items.
And the plan is certainly fluid. We know that's gonna
Yeah.
change, so I'm not looking to say, that's frozen in time. No, I understand that's gonna be fluid, and I just wanna make sure that it's not abused at some
No,
point in
that's
the
clear, but
future.
just a question. So obviously the title says long-term, Gary, but how would you phrase that differently for when I put my little blurb in?
I would say that it is earmarked for projects that are, 10, I would say 10-plus years, and larger sums of capital commitment.
You wanna say that
Of like, you know, a
it's 10 different
school,
projects that appear on the long-term capital plan?
yeah, school, 200,000, yeah, I mean.
That's
there-
actually an
there was-
interesting way to
There was one
word
that
it.
was I mean, there is one that the committees presented, but I believe they're gonna do a presentation at town meeting, so.
Yeah. I mean, 10+ years is good, that's a time frame. But, you know, what's larger sums?
Right,
'Cause
yeah.
that's, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
subjective.
what's $100 million today, by the time we go to initiate a project that could be 110 million? I mean, it's,
So, I mean, I'm just putting notes right now. I haven't finished the sentence by any means, that we'll all get to look at when we're ready. But I'll just say reference the capital plan?
Yeah.
Long-term.
long-term capital plan, yeah.
Okay. All right, good enough for now.
Okay, want to vote?
Please.
Yeah, sure.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? See none? Okay. Pro-
500.
Okay, appropriation for long-term capital stabilization fund. To see the town will pursuant to the fourth paragraph of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, to dedicate without further appropriation $1 million from the general fund surplus revenue to the long-term capitalization fund.
Motion to recommend?
Motion made by Janine, second by Phil. Discussion. Okay, I mean, $1 million isn't enough. But I guess it's a start.
I mean,
Oh,
we
it's true.
met
It's
with
a good
CIPC this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and just the ask on the short-term projects, short-term maintenance, routine maintenance in town, just the ask from the departments was 25 million. 19, of that, 19.1 million is level 1 of priority. So we, you know, my recommendation to them was, and it's something we need to continue to discuss, free cash is not enough to supplement, even on the short term. So borrowing at some extent will have to happen, because if you don't maintain those smaller projects, it becomes a bigger issue. And, you know, and that's kind of what we need to focus on, not only on the long term, but on the short term.
So every year we vote on, it could be $1 million, it could be $2 million, right? It could be, as we go forward.
You mean as far as,
You have to vote.
The
for-
yeah, right,
appropriation.
to appropriate the money, correct. And in some years, it may be maybe 500,000, it may stay at $1 million, depending on what the source of funding is, if it's free cash, what the draw is on the free cash, if we need, you know, if other departments need those funds for certain things. So that could be adjusted at, you know, at any time.
Every year.
Yeah.
Every year. Okay, but,
And this is positive, the rating agencies, we mentioned this to the rating agencies when we got rated the last time for AAA, and they saw this as a positive.
and will this be voted on twice a year or once a year?
Right now, we're saying once a year.
Once a year, okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any questions? or-
I don't think so.
Okay, take a vote.
Make the fund,
All in
you gotta
favor,
put
say,
something.
what's that?
Aye.
So if you're gonna make the fund, you gotta put something in it.
Right, exactly right.
Absolutely.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none. Okay, thank you.
500.
Okay.
So on Article 24, did the committee want me to invite the conservation agent in to discuss it? Maybe he can summarize it in,
Is that wetlands?
yeah, that was the amendment to the wetlands bylaw provisions. Mark Garrett is the conservation agent.
I mean, if we have time, it might be helpful, because it's pretty long.
I
Yeah,
think he'd
I will
probably
not be
summarize
reading
it
this.
in a
I
little
will
bit.
not be reading this.
Right. If the committee wants, I mean, I can try to schedule them for next week.
Okay,
Yeah,
That would
'cause
be good.
that'll give us the neater
A
little
week to
summary.
read it. Yeah, summarize it.
Okay, so,
do you have a revenue update?
yeah, everything else on, everything, just to go through the rest of these, the rest of them are, this is a big article here.
Charter stuff.
Land acquisition, Article 35, that is still being, skip over. Oh, the charter amendments, we don't have those, that's 25 through 32. 33 is extending lease of the town property, that they're still working on that. Police station, sale of land, Article 34, they're working on that. land acquisition from Pascamanset River, they're finalizing that. And 36 is a citizen's petition, so they're still working on that.
That citizen
Mr.
petition
Chairman.
is detailed.
Compared to last year.
Yeah, it
So
can't
we
be-
did, I mean, you knocked out a few of them tonight, this is pretty good, we'll be pushing
Okay.
for next week.
So
So, let's see, revenues.
revenues, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I have no idea what's coming down from the Charter Review Committee. I don't know if there's significant changes there or minor changes. Are we gonna see any type of presentation on that? I know,
I
is
haven't
it on
seen-
our schedule, or I haven't seen anything?
I haven't seen anything from the charter committee, so I don't know, I would have to see what it entails, and then we can schedule something, and see what they're proposing.
Is there,
as far as-
what, blocking out six
6 articles?
articles? I would think that's probably gonna be something significant, where we're gonna want some type of presentation.
Well, there's
One of them I know is
elusive little
correcting grammar
headlines
and
here.
things like that, but
that should catch
others,
your
the other
interest.
articles are substantial, I guess, in form, so, once I find out, and once Sean and I get it from them, we can potentially schedule something.
Is there a chair of that committee, Dan?
I'm
Is it
sure there
Terry?
is.
Yeah, I have no idea who it is,
I
but,
don't know, I'm not sure who
Well,
it is.
Terry and Brian are on it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
you know.
Do they have a deadline when they have to have that done by?
Well, we're getting close to,
Well, that's what I mean, what is that deadline to
June
put things
1st.
on? I know. To put things on the warrant, it must be soon. June 1st. Gets hot off the press, handed to us.
so every quarter, I like to update the committee on where we stand with revenues. So the biggest, these are mostly local receipts, so the biggest one, obviously, that you know is the motor vehicle. We just sent out, actually, the motor vehicle commitment was just due on the 31st of March. That's the commitment, what I call commitment 1. And so right now, compared to the actuals and estimated receipts, now I still have to send out demands, so that's, we're off about 90,000, but we still have about 4 other commitments to collect before the end of the fiscal year, so we'll be in pretty good shape. We'll meet the budgeted revenues anticipated. We look at other excise, vote excise, room occupancy. You know, we're still collecting on those, meals tax, cannabis. We did collect, I believe, an agreement that they had with one of the companies of $75,000. So,
So we haven't got anything on Canada?
Nothing. No, nothing yet. There's also a delay when they pay us from the state. It's, I believe, a 3-month delay once we receive the revenues from them. It's like the prior 3 months revenue, so it's not a one-for-one.
Right. So,
But in this year's fiscal '25 budget, we're pretty conservative. We ratcheted down the revenues on those because
okay.
I didn't feel that we were gonna collect what we initially had thought we were gonna collect on it. But, because now we have the facility on Route 6, which is gonna be opening, I mean, across from the Cask and Pig. Then they've got the facility at the Fons Corner. And I don't know if, I think there's another facility in town, one more facility.
Okay, but we had, there was an agreement, right, that we struck with these 2 companies. And then the state changed the agreements, is that correct?
So my understanding is that what happened was, they're challenging the agreements that were initiated by a lot of communities in Massachusetts, saying that there was I think it was, they were stating it was unconstitutional how they were charging extra fees for something that now is legal. So we did get an agreement settlement with one of the companies, and I don't know what's gonna happen with the others that haven't even, I don't think the one on Route 6 has opened up yet, but it's scheduled to open up soon, I guess.
It's,
We're working on it.
construction's going pretty slow.
Yeah.
Not a lot of activity there.
So penalties and interest, we're still collecting on this, we're gonna meet these benchmarks, because this is only as of March. And, see, the other big one down here was Parks revenue. I mean, we're still, I mean, the bucket hasn't opened yet, so that's still
Oh, right.
licenses and permits. This is interesting because, you know, we see a decrease here, but we're still only in March, so we're gonna definitely recoup that revenue in the next 3 months. The other big one was investment income. Talked about that. Right here. I mean, we're up 235,000 from last year, which is a substantial amount of money because of,
Higher interest.
yeah, higher interest rates. So, we're actually borrowing on a project like the AMR, borrowing at 2%, 2.5%, and earning 5% in the bank, so, we got lucky on that project. So in total, we're off 33,000 on the revenues, but we still have April, May, and June on these. So we're trending as budgeted on most of the revenues.
Can you talk a little about the non-recurring receipts?
So these are the net metering credits. When we build a budget for the revenues, this is kind of like, we don't include these in the top, we even though we collect them, because they are really unknowns. Net metering credits are pretty much on usage and things like that. Claims and settlements, same thing. State and federal grants, that's another unknown. When we get it, we get it. If, you know, it all depends on when we apply for them. So Sapphire Power, this is the facility on Energy Road. They're under an agreement with the town. They pay us a certain amount of money as a, when they came in, they agreed to pay this for a certain amount of years. So that's still, I believe that's another 6 or 7 years as far as the agreement is concerned. So this is their contribution. It's a gift tax that they give us. So, and that's it. So we're budgeting, we're trending, the revenues are trending as budgeted,
So this is through March 31st?
yes. So we'll give another update in June.
What are rentals?
Where was that, Jeannie?
Line number 11.
Oh, yeah.
Low, but it just.
Rentals.
What is that?
Say that's not the Airbnb, no, the Airbnb's.
I say it's not much, but.
No.
Yeah, I think that is with, DPW.
They rent space or something, is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
it could be with them or the schools, they might have to clarify that. We should probably put it in.
Just a
what it is.
curiosity.
We could put it in.
Oh,
here
yeah,
what it
that'd be
is
cool.
As a description.
Yeah.
So the ambulance, we didn't estimate anything there? That's the ambulance fees?
Well, it just could be that we haven't collected it yet in this fiscal year. So some of it could come in April, May, June, it all depends on when they're coming in. Another snapshot too of this is, let's see, the actuals compared to last year. So if you see, if you look, we're way above budget on the motor vehicle, all these categories. So we're trending in positive direction. Now,
That's
like
good.
licensing, that's, you know, I always say that a lot of this stuff is seasonal too, when you talk about building and all that, people start the building process in the fall, in the spring, it ramps up towards the summer, so you're collecting more of that revenue at certain times of the year.
Well, they had issues with the building department too, right? Because that could be a reason too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that could be one of the reasons. I mean, like, investment income compared to last year, we're up almost $400,000.
Yeah.
That's big.
And what's happening with those shopping cart fines?
We are collecting those. We,
I mean, it was high, and now
Yeah.
it's,
we send our deputy, so we have a deputy that works with us in my office, and we send them notice to Walmart, Target, and we've collected a lot on those. And it could be, the reason why that's
Wow.
down is because the enforcement is actually happening and taking place. You know, the whole point of it really wasn't to be a sustainable piece of revenue, it was just to get the word out that, you know, shopping carts belong at the facility and not on the
Not
streets.
on the side of the
Right,
road.
yeah.
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 Good.
So in Schedule A, as I mentioned, we'll have next week.
Okay.
And then just to go over the remaining schedule here, Sean will be presenting the town administrator budget, EMA and building on 4/18 at the next meeting.
Okay,
And the planning board warrant articles, they will be reviewed. We'll have a representative from the planning department on 4/25.
okay. I just want to, if you talked, is the head of the planning department going to make the
Yes.
presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to, if you'd remind her that we want to see the old one and the new one.
Yes, she's gonna forward that to me, and I can forward that to the committee. She had told me that she would present that to the committee.
All right, any liaison reports? No? Okay. So I'm like, make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Carrie make a motion to adjourn, Phil second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.